The night Michael Carter stood in his small Ohio kitchen, he felt the quiet weight of loneliness settle deep into his chest, like a stone pressing down with every heartbeat. The microwave clock blinked 9:17, a reminder that another long day had ended. Yet the emptiness lingered. He looked at the neatly ironed shirt hanging from a cabinet, ready for tomorrow's work, and sighed. This was a kind of loneliness that whispered, not shouted. It lived in the empty lunchboxes, in the silent car rides to school, in birthdays celebrated with carefully forced smiles and half-empty rooms. Michael, a single father in his late 30s, had been raising his 8-year-old son, Noah, alone ever since a tragic winter accident had claimed his wife's life. Every day felt like carrying a burden too heavy for one person, yet he carried it. He brewed coffee while Noah slept, packed lunches with little notes folded carefully inside napkins, and left for work as the sun rose. His job as a building inspector paid the bills, but never allowed for much else. No luxury, no extra nights out, no comfort beyond the simple safety of keeping a roof over their heads. Evenings were the same routine: homework, simple dinners, and bedtime stories read with tired eyes. Michael loved his son fiercely, but the world outside his small home had grown narrower over the years. Friends had drifted away, unsure how to navigate the absence of his late wife, and dating felt like a foreign language he no longer spoke. To him, stepping into a restaurant to explain his past seemed exhausting before it even began. Next door lived Sarah Whitman, a calm and kind nurse in her early 30s. She had moved into the neighborhood 2 years prior and quickly became a quiet presence of support. Every morning she waved as she watered her garden. When Noah caught the flu, she brought over soup. Once, when Michael was late from work, she shoveled the driveway herself. Her gestures were small, unassuming, yet they carried weight, like sunlight warming a cold room. Michael had always appreciated her, but never assumed more than neighborly kindness. His focus was always on Noah, on keeping him safe, happy, and loved. Then one Saturday afternoon, as Michael wrestled with anxiety over a date arranged by a colleague, he found himself staring across the yard at Sarah. The sunlight caught in her brown hair, her hands working carefully in the soil, and before his fear could stop him, he walked over. He explained his plan awkwardly. He needed advice, a second opinion on a tie, and as she could watch Noah for a few hours. Sarah listened, thoughtful and calm, without a hint of surprise. She agreed to help, but added something Michael hadn't expected, words that would quietly shift the trajectory of his life. She told him that he didn't need to prove anything to anyone, that honesty and kindness mattered more than polished conversation, that being a devoted father was proof enough of his character. Her words settled into his chest, soft yet heavy, and for the first time in years, Michael felt a spark of relief. When he left his house that evening, dressed for the date, he did not feel like an imposter anymore. The small act of asking for help had changed something fundamental. He felt capable, whole, and ready, not for romance, necessarily, but for life itself. Michael's steps to Sarah's house had been tentative, uncertain, but her calm presence was grounding. Leaving Noah under her care, he noticed how easily his son laughed with her, how safe and relaxed he seemed. Something softened in Michael, a tension he hadn't realized he was carrying. The date itself was unremarkable in many ways. At a small Italian restaurant downtown, conversation flowed politely but never deeply. Yet Michael was calm, grounded, and aware for the first time in years. He spoke openly about Noah, about his life, without rehearsed lines of defensiveness. He noticed how honesty replaced performance. The evening ended not with fireworks, but with gratitude. He realized that life's lessons often came in quiet moments, not grand gestures. Returning home, Michael found Noah asleep on the couch, a blanket tucked around his shoulders. Sarah sat nearby, reading softly, keeping quiet watch. She explained some of Noah's thoughts from the day: school, baseball, small dreams, and worries. Hearing his son described through another's eyes hit Michael unexpectedly. Even exhausted and overworked, he was doing something right. His small victories as a father mattered. In the weeks that followed, subtle changes unfolded. Michael lingered on his porch more often, noticed the sunlight on Sarah's garden, smiled with less effort. Their conversations deepened, moving beyond brief neighborly exchanges to reflections on work, life, and the strange paths people take. He noticed how he laughed more freely around her, real laughter that hadn't come in years. He observed Sarah's interactions with Noah, care without overstepping, kindness without judgment, respect without intrusion. Life tested them, as it always does. One afternoon, Noah fell at school and broke his arm. Panic swept over Michael, but Sarah arrived at the hospital after her shift. She guided him through medical procedures, calmed his nerves, and stayed with him until Noah slept. Watching her tuck the blanket around his son with practiced gentleness, Michael realized this was not about dating. It was about partnership, about showing up when it truly mattered. Michael began to internalize Sarah's first lesson. Life was not about perfection or presentation. It was about resilience, honesty, and the quiet power of being there for one another. Each small act of support, each shared laugh, each moment of trust, slowly rewrote the narrative of his life. The fear that had once constrained him began to fade, replaced by cautious optimism. By mid-fall, their connection had grown naturally. They attended school events together, took walks in the park, shared quiet dinners. The neighborhood noticed but did not question it. No need, it simply made sense. Michael began to understand love differently. It did not always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it appeared as steady light, illuminating the way after long winter nights. Over time, Michael's life transformed quietly but profoundly. He allowed himself to imagine shared dinners, shared worries, shared joys, not replacing the past, but honoring it through living fully. Sarah's steady presence and care had become indispensable, her influence a gentle guide toward healing and resilience. Seasons changed, and with them, Michael noticed how laughter and warmth filled their home. Small gestures, Noah's smiles, shared chores, evening walks, wove a new rhythm of life. Vulnerability no longer felt dangerous. Accepting help was no longer weakness. Instead, it became a form of strength, a bridge between loneliness and connection. Life continued testing them. Another emergency, a late-night call from Noah's school. Sarah's timely support reminded Michael how deeply interconnected trust, care, and reliability could be. He realized that Sarah's guidance on that first evening, about honesty and kindness, was not just advice for dating. It was guidance for living, for becoming a man defined not by loss but by resilience. As months passed, Michael and Sarah's bond deepened naturally. They attended Noah's baseball games together, shared quiet conversations on the porch, and supported each other through everyday challenges. The relationship that grew was not based on replacing loss, but on building a future strengthened by shared trust, compassion, and understanding. One quiet evening, Michael watched Noah do homework while Sarah prepared dinner. The house felt full, not of noise, but of safety, trust, and shared life. He realized that the most important moments often come disguised as ordinary requests, that small gestures and kind words can quietly reroute a destiny. Years later, Michael reflected on that pivotal night when he had first asked Sarah for advice. That small act of vulnerability had changed everything, not just his romantic life, but his perspective on connection, love, and the power of community. The simple truth he carried forward was clear. Love does not always arrive when you are ready, but it often arrives when you are honest, present, and open. Sarah had helped him rediscover not just the possibility of love, but the possibility of hope, resilience, and a future brighter than the shadows of loss. Michael's journey proved that kindness, guidance, and quiet support could transform even the loneliest lives. And as Noah's laughter echoed through their home, Michael understood that sometimes the neighbor who helps you prepare for a date ends up helping you rediscover life itself.